The potential trouble for the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. Israel says Hamas did not release a civilian hostage as they agreed to, and that Israel won't allow Palestinians into northern Gaza until that happens. But Hamas claims it has provided proof of life for that hostage. ABC News foreign correspondent Britt Clennett has the latest from Jerusalem.
Thousands of Palestinians blocked from returning to their homes in northern Gaza. Under the ceasefire deal, the IDF was supposed to withdraw troops from the corridor that cuts off the north from the south, after the second batch of hostages were released on Saturday and 200 Palestinian prisoners also freed. But huge crowds of displaced Gazans finding the IDF was still in place. Chaos and fear erupting by the blocked road as gunshots fired. Gazans running in fear, many holding the bags full of belongings they thought they would be bringing home. Israel accusing Hamas of breaching the terms of the ceasefire deal by withholding a civilian hostage. Hamas says 29-year-old Abel Yahud is alive and will be released next week, even as Gazans clamour to return home. On board Air Force One, President Donald Trump offering his own take on where Gazans should eventually go.
I'd like Egypt to take people, and I'd like Jordan to take people. I mean, you're talking about probably 1.5 million people, and we just clean out that whole thing.
The question of who will govern Gaza's future brought into sharp focus, with Hamas parading the streets in a show of force on Saturday. Emotional reunions for the families of Karina Ariev, Daniela Gilboa, Nami Levy and Liri Albag. In Tel Aviv, crowds gathered to push for the remaining 33 hostages, which include 2 Americans, set to be released in this first phase of the deal.
Despite the release of those 4 hostages, the fragility of that deal very much felt here, with many people worried that the ceasefire just won't hold.
For the relatives of those still held captive, like Orlevi's brother Michael, it's an anxious wait.
I still cannot breathe because my brother is still there.
And Britt Clennett is joining us live from Jerusalem. So, Britt, do we know anything more about the female civilian who is supposed to have been released ahead of the 4 soldiers freed on Saturday? And what about the holdup here?
Hi, Whit. Yeah, so Hamas says she is alive and that she was a soldier. That's something Israel fiercely rejects. But she wasn't actually an active fighter, and that's key. Israel classifies her as a civilian, and she wasn't captured from a military base. She was captured from her home, kidnapped from near Oz Kibbutz on October 7th. Now, Hamas says she has military training, but, you know, everyone must go through some kind of military training here. It is compulsory. There are reports in Israeli media, that the 2 sides may come to some kind of agreement to release her before the next round. But certainly there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of back channeling to kind of iron this out and make sure it doesn't compromise the deal and certainly turn into a bigger issue than it is.
Yeah, and speaking of that, you noted earlier the Palestinians now blocked from returning to the north there. That was a key part of the deal as well. Could this derail the fragile ceasefire? And if so, what happens next?
Yeah, a lot of disappointment for those people. Thousands of people gathering at that corridor, desperate to go home to whatever is left of their homes. We know that there's a lot of destruction in the north, entire areas, entire blocks completely flattened, apocalyptic scenes we've been seeing in North Gaza. But there is no clear indication of when they will actually open up that corridor and allow them to go back home. We heard from the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu yesterday, who was adamant that they need an indication of where Abel Yahud, when she's coming out, of the status of her, whether she is alive. They've asked for proof of life as well. So it is tied to the release of Yahud. We speak to people in the south who say that they do want to return, but many of them say that it's just too precarious at this stage, that the fighting could start at any point, and to move their whole families, uproot them and go back is just too dangerous. So certainly a lot of understanding of the fragility of this deal and the fact that they just don't think it's worth moving at this point, many of them. But as we saw, thousands of people at that border desperate to go back. These are people that just feel like they need to go back to their homes and restart their livelihood there.
And this is only phase 1 of the deal. It just goes to show how complicated this will be moving ahead. Also, what about the international reaction to President Trump's suggestion that countries like Egypt and Jordan should be taking in more Palestinian refugees?
Yeah, so, we have those images of Gazans clamouring to return to their homes, so many displaced people, and yet Trump's controversial comments met with a lot of anger here in the Middle East. First, we've heard reactions from Jordan just moments ago. They reject comments by President Trump and said there shouldn't be a displacement of people from Gaza. They also reiterated the commitment to the two-state solution. They say if Palestinians leave Gaza, we have to also consider that this idea of the two-state solution would be vanished. Also for the Gazans, there is a connection to the land. This is part and parcel of their cause. On the other hand, where it's been welcomed by the far right, and there's no surprise over that, they've long advocated for the resettlement of Gaza.
So much at stake and a lot to watch here in the weeks ahead. Britt Clennett, thank you so much.